Hello, everyone. So I bring you the second video of our new series on editorial analysis. So for this video, students, I have selected two articles. Both are from the Hindu. The link for those articles will be provided to you in the description box. So you can also read that article. So let's get started. Yeah, so the first article that I've chosen for this analysis is titled Center State Relations, Center of the Debate, right? Now, students, what this article says is that chief ministers of West Bengal and Tamil Nadu, Mamata Banerjee and MK Stalin, respectively, have jointly proposed a convention of non-BJP chief ministers, right? And this is a nascent initiative with no clear agenda. That means that there is no clarity as to what the purpose of this convention would be, what would be the role of this convention or this alliance, right? For now, Mamata Banerjee and Stalin have only proposed to bring together the chief ministers of various non-BJP states. Now, we all know, students, that the relations between the center and the state ruled by opposition, they are sort of strained, right? Especially under the present government, because the present government has come with a thumping majority. It has a very definite mandate, and it is not dependent on the regional governments or the state governments for its survival, the way it is in the case of coalition government, right? So the relationship between the center and the states has supposedly, they have supposedly become very strained. And in parliament recently, in fact, PM Narendra Modi and Congress leader Rahul Gandhi had a heated debate on the scope and limits of Indian federalism. Next. Now, this article is about the autonomy of the states in their relations with the center. And it says that center, it has been observed that center is more accommodative towards state government, right? Or it gives into the demands of the state government when they are dependent for survival on them. And therefore, a convention of the CMs can articulate the concerns of the states, but it should guard against turning into an occasions for the counterproductive polemic rooted in electoral calculations. So the author takes the view, the author of this article, he takes the view that this alliance or convention of the chief ministers of the non-BJP states, so it can be a good idea, if they're coming together, if they are able to articulate and raise the concerns of the states, if they are able to act as a bulwark against the growing domination of the center government. However, it should steer away from just being, a grouping for electoral calculation, students, right? Okay, students. So now let's look at center-state relations. So our constitution says that India is a federalism. Now, what is federalism? Federalism is a, government setup wherein there are governments at, two levels. So for instance, in the case of India, you have a government at the national level and you have a government at the state level. So this dual setup of government is known as federalism, students, right? And for a federal system to operate effectively, students, it is necessary that there is harmony and coordination between the center and the state. And if you see, the constitution divides the powers between the center and the state. So we have got these, various lists the administrative, legislative, and financial powers have been divided between the center and the state on the basis of the union list and the center list, the state list, right? Now, the party system is perhaps the most important intervening variable that significantly influences the working of a federal political system, students. So basically, a federal political system can work well only when there is coordination between the center and the state. But the coordination and relations between the center and the state, students, is further dependent on the government at the two levels. So say if you have the same government at the center and the state level, say the case of the UP government and the center government, you have BJP at both places. So usually you'd find that the coordination is smooth. However, when you have a party at the state government which is different from that of the center government, then it can lead to instances of friction and conflict, right? And at the end of the day, it's the state, it's the regional development that sort of suffers because of this. Now, one party rule at the center and marked the beginning of the coalition government at the center. The regional parties became an integral part of federal cabinet and started asserting themselves in a forceful manner at the center. Now, what this says is that, so initially in India, we had a one-party system, both at the center and the state. Like you had, when India got independent, you had the Congress rule both at the center and the state. So federalism went on very smoothly, students, right? India used to pride itself for being a very strong federal setup. But, then what happened was that gradually this one-party system, it gave way to a coalition government system. So when you have a coalition government, students, then what happens is that you have a number of governments, number of smaller parties coming together to form the government. Now, what happens is in such a scenario, the center becomes dependent on the regional parties, on the small parties, state parties for their survival, because they form government based on their support, right? So in such cases also, students, coalition government in a way benefits or leads to strong regional development or strong coordination between the center and the state, because the center government has to appease the state governments because it is dependent for its survival on them, right? So that means federal setup is seen to be working well when you have either the same government both at the center and the state, or there's a coalition government wherein the regional parties have a say and a voice in the governance of the country, and the center government has to, give in to the demands of the state governments. So in those cases also, it's seen that the federalism works very smoothly. However, students, this can be a problem when you have a very strong government at the center, like in the present case, which has a strong majority and is not dependent on the smaller regional parties, right? So this is the current situation, students, that the current dispensation is working towards centralizing economic power in conjunction with political centralization. So it's been alleged, we don't know how much of that is true, but it has been alleged that the current dispensation or the current central government, the BJP government, is very dominating. It has very centralizing tendencies, students, right? And therefore, these non-BJP, states with non-BJP governments, they want to come together towards an alliance against the over-domineering central government, because of the overbearing central government that is supposed to be curtailing the power of the state government. These parties want to come together against the growing domination of the central government, right? So students, what is the takeaway from this? The takeaway from this is, one, that the federal setup can sort of, get dysfunctional, or, it can face issues when you don't have the same government at both the central and the state, and also when you don't have, or the central government is not dependent on the state governments for its survival, right? But so the current situation is supposedly a little problematic, especially when the central government faces charges or allegations of being overbearing and domineering, right? So hence this alliance, however, can only work when, like I mentioned, they don't have any electoral agenda, but they're working earnestly to, or in the larger interest of the state from Ukraine border. Now, students, the article says that Russia has announced that it will be pulling back some troops from Ukraine borders, and this is going to be the strongest signal of de-escalation, students. right? So we know that it's been a while that there's a situation of, tension and open conflict between Ukraine and Russia. So even though Russia has pulled back some of its troops from the borders, the article says that this is too early. It is too early to say that the crisis is over, right? And the complex issue is rooted in Russia's security concerns and NATO's expansionary open door. Now, students, you know, Russia has decided to pull back, like the article says, pull back its military from the borders. So basically, there have been several rounds of diplomatic talks in the recent past. And through these talks, they've been able to accommodate Russia's security concerns and the West's fear of Russian aggression, right? And there are also, proposals that the Minsk agreement would be soon executed, right? And they would find a lasting solution to Europe's most dangerous security crisis. Now, let's quickly understand Russia-Ukraine conflict, students. The tension on the Russia-Ukraine border represents a major security crisis for the region, with the potential to snowball into a broader conflict. So this represents one of the most severe, worst security crises that Europe has ever faced. And Russia has amassed around 90,000 troops at the border. And students, Ukraine and Russia share hundreds of years of cultural, linguistic, and familial links. Actually, to give you the historical background, Ukraine was part of the erstwhile Soviet Union, students, right? But when Ukraine got separated from the Soviet Union, students, since then, there have been attempts by the Western powers to exert their greater influence in the region and to sort of mitigate the growing influence of Russia in the region. They've tried to control Ukraine, right? Or to use Ukraine against Russia. So these are the causes of conflict: balance of power, one. Ever since Ukraine split from Soviet Union, both Russia and West have vied for greater influence in the country in order to keep the balance of power in the region in their favor. That's one. Secondly, Ukraine acts as a buffer zone between Russia and the West. Third, Russia has some interest in the Black Sea, students, right? The unique geography of Black Sea confers several geopolitical advantages to Russia. So Russia wants to wield greater power in the Black Sea. And then, of course, there's this whole separatist movement going on in Ukraine, wherein the Donbass region, right? So it's called the Donbass region, students, and this is in the eastern part of the Ukraine, and it has been facing a pro-Russian separatist movement since 20. Then next, students, invasion of Crimea. So we all know that Russia seized Crimea from Ukraine. And this was the first time ever that a European country, annexed territory from another country. And the annexation of Crimea from Ukraine, students, followed a Russian military intervention in Crimea, right? And, this was after the whole Ukraine revolution. And it was part of the wider unrest across southern and eastern Ukraine. Then, students, one of the most important reasons for the whole growing tension between Ukraine and Russia is the Ukraine's NATO membership, students. Ukraine has urged the North Atlantic Treaty Organization to speed up his country's membership in the alliance. And Russia has declared such a move a red line and worried about the consequences of the US military alliances expanding right up to its doorstep. So what is the current situation, students? The current situation is that Russia is seeking assurances from US that Ukraine should not be or will not be inducted into the NATO, students, right? That is one. Secondly, Russia is keeping the tensions high at Ukraine border, although it has decided to de-escalate, but it would not completely withdraw its presence from the borders because, it would want to extract some sanction relief and concessions from the West. And thirdly, any kind of military action by the US or EU against Russia would precipitate a major crisis for the whole world, right? And so far not been mooted by any of the parties involved. Now, coming to what is India's stand, students. So India did not join the Western powers' condemnation of Russia's intervention in Crimea and kept a low profile on the issue. So we all know, students, that Russia and India, they enjoy very favorable relations with each other, and they have been friends since ever. So India did not join the Western powers' condemnation of Russia. India did not openly support that. And it kept a very low profile on that issue. And in November 2020, India voted against a Ukraine-sponsored resolution in the UN that condemned alleged human rights violation in Crimea, right? So India chose to back its old ally, Russia, on this issue. Now, let's quickly do some vocabulary words, students. So the first word for today is partisan. Now, what does the word partisan mean, students? Partisan means showing too much support for one person, group, or idea, right? So the way it was used in the article was that the center has a partisan attitude towards the states ruled by, its own party. So the center's partisan attitude towards the state. Partisan means it supports, or it is positively biased toward certain states over others. This is known as partisan. When you are biased, or when you show too much support for one person, group, or idea. The second is the word encroachment, students. It means intrusion into other person's rights or territory. So, the actual meaning of encroachment is in context of the territory. For example, when you encroach into somebody else's territory, when you intrude or expand into somebody else's area or territory, right? For example, you must have heard that many commercial complexes have encroached on the roads, right? So, but however, there's a symbolic meaning also for the word encroachment when you try to intrude into other person's right. Like in this case, center's encroachment into the states. That's how it was used in the article, that the center is trying to encroach into the states. It's trying to encroach upon the rights of the state, right? Then students, next word is polemic. So polemic, it is a speech or piece of writing or practice that argues very strongly for or against somebody or something, right? So a speech or a practice that argues against something or somebody. Okay, so the way it was used in the article, counterproductive polemic rooted in electoral calculations, that this alliance, the alliance that they have mooted, should not turn out to be a polemic, that just a practice of being against the central government for electoral benefits. Okay. Next, students, nascent. Nascent means beginning to exist, not yet completely developed, right? Something that is in very initial formative stages, not something that has not taken shape really, is not well developed. For example, you can say, my ideas are still very nascent on this subject. Nascent means they are still very, they're just begun to form. They're just beginning to exist, not well and concrete. So the way it is used in this article, the initiative is still nascent and there is no clear agenda. That means this whole initiative of, non-BJP states coming together, this whole initiative is still nascent and there is no clear agenda, right? So that's all for this video, students. I'll see you very soon with yet another video. Thank you so much.